Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we're going to find out who would win in a fight between the Ultimate Puncher, Wildcat from DC, and the Ultimate Kicker, Batroc the Leaper from Marvel.
Yeah, they're pretty obscure characters.
Yeah.
You may be familiar with Wildcat if you've been watching the Stargirl CW TV series, but of course that version of the character is his protege, Yolanda Montez, and not Ted Grant, the guy I'll be using in this matchup.
And you'll be familiar with Batroc the Leaper if you've watched Captain America the Winter Soldier or the Falcon and the Winter Soldier television series, because he's played by Georges St. Pierre in both of those things. Great character. It'll be a great martial arts fight. Can't wait to break these characters down and discuss who would win in a fight later on this episode. Before that, we're going to talk about the comic book movie news to have come out in the past week, including the big news that AT&T has offloaded Warner Brothers and merged it with Discovery.
Which really isn't comic book superhero news. It's business news, really. But it in itself did spawn a torrent of DC news in response.
Yeah, including the news that the Batgirl film has gotten new directors. We learned about casting news for the upcoming DC League of Super Pets animated film. We got a trailer for Batman The Long Halloween Part 2. And we got some news regarding DC's animated slate.
Yeah, the DC news was so big there really wasn't any Marvel news to compete with it. But as always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic.
As you guys know, we've been pushing our Patreon over the past few weeks. Our goal is to get to 100 patrons by the time the Black Widow movie comes out. That's just a small percentage of our listeners overall, so we know you guys can do it. Right now we're at 37 patrons, I think, and we want to give a huge shout out to Cactus Feet, Chris Castaneda, Peric, Andrew Claus, Simon Bermudez, John Frolinger, and Christian Wolf for joining up with us.
Yeah, that's just over the past few weeks. Everyone has really stepped up to get those bonus perks and help keep the show free, so we appreciate you guys.
Right, because as we mentioned before, with the new paradigm shift of Apple Podcasts and Spotify letting podcasters put their show behind a paywall, making their shows available at a price, Jonathan and I are trying to get patrons to compensate for that and keep this show free. Again, if we can hit 100 patrons by the middle of July, the show will remain free to everyone. But if you sign up for Patreon, you not only get the show no matter what, you also get access to tons of bonus perks, including bonus content, monthly watch-along parties, access to our Discord chat server, and that's just at the $2 a month tier. At $10, you get a 1.5-inch die-struck iron full-color pin every other month. They're limited release pins, and they're really cool. Check us out on social media if you want to see pictures of those. The first month we're giving them away in June. That set will be Red Hood versus Punisher.
And in the $18 tier, you get executive producer status, which allows you to participate in executive producer polls and help determine some of the content we put on the show. You also get credit at the end of every episode, and you get an official executive producer certificate. And you also get a set of pins every month.
Yeah, and now that we've hit 37 patrons, we're only about 13 patrons away from our first Patreon goal. Once we hit 50 patrons, we'll be releasing a top 10 bonus mini podcast episode every month.
So let's keep it going and get that extra bonus content.
Yeah, guys, I know we could do it. 100 patrons before Black Widow. Let's keep this show free. Visit patreon.com/dynamicduel, sign up for one of our tiers, and get more from this show. But with that out of the way,
quick to the no prize. So No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that I personally draw for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week.
Last week's question was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much humor do you like with your Venom and why? And that question was coming off of the latest Venom Let There Be Carnage trailer.
Yeah, there was a lot of fervor online after that trailer came out regarding the amount of humor in the trailer. So I thought we would get a lot more answers than we did.
It may not have been a great question because we only got 3 answers total, but we have 2 honorable mentions and 1 winner. Our first honorable mention goes to Badir Bangora, who said,
"What up, Dynamic Duo? This is Badir. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd want my Venom movie to be about a 2 in the humor department. I'd want it to be more philosophical and gritty, very similar to how the Joker was, with the same sort of theme. And I'd like the humor to be dark and more systematically placed, more of a situational sort of humor. Thank you."
Which is not at all what this new Venom movie looks like it will do.
No, it definitely doesn't have the Joker tone or vibe, which was very dark. And I think if they were to ever reboot the Venom franchise, I would love to see that take on the character, just something really dark.
Yeah, it may be too late now, but, I think a lot of people like Venom, though they may not necessarily know how he's portrayed in the comics.
And he's definitely been portrayed both ways, both very dark and sometimes occasionally humorous. He was really cool in the King in Black comic book storyline, where he really wasn't that funny.
Our next honorable mention goes to Shane Habazin, who said,
What's up, Johnny Joe? It's Shane here. So, with Venom in humor, there is some degree of Venom that is very serious, like the Black King storyline or whatever. But then there are things like that one time when Venom got a woman's purse back and then patted her head and then just zoomed off. So there should be some degree of humor in the Venom movies, just as there is in the comics.
And that's true, and as we mentioned in our review of the first Venom film, one of my favorite comic book panels with Venom was when he was singing Strangers in the Night as he and Spider-Man were swinging to go defeat Carnage. It just seemed so out of character. The thing is, the humor works best when it is out of character, when it's in moderate spurts.
and I do think it'll be in moderate spurts in this film. Different trailers set different tones, and I think this was probably their funny trailer, just to get people happy and make the film look like it was fun.
I mean, perhaps. But the winner of this week's No Prize goes to Sana Farhumand, who said,
So I'd say, my name is Sana Farhumand, and I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, I like it probably about the 6 or 7. I want it to be funny, but if it gets too funny, it gets kind of ridiculous. What I don't really like is when superhero movies or just any movie have their characters be too comedic. I didn't really enjoy it when they did it with Doctor Strange. I did enjoy the movie, but I didn't enjoy it that much, and I think that the Andy Serkis can do it right. It'll be great.
maybe he got cut off right there at the end. But yeah, I think Andy Serkis has great instincts when it comes to both drama and humor that I think he'll bring to this movie. Yeah, we saw a lot of humor in the first trailer for Venom Let There Be Carnage, but I'm really willing to bet that the movie is also going to be a whole lot darker than the first Venom film. I think he's going to balance it well. That's my hunch.
Yeah, and I also agree with Sana in that when superhero films get too ridiculous, too comedic, it's kind of off-putting. Again, I want these characters to be taken seriously, and I don't want them to get to the level of absurdity of, say, like the Batman 60s TV show. Not that I'm afraid that this film will get that far, but we've seen it in the past with movies like Batman and Robin, and we know how disastrous that could be to the genre. So congrats once again to Sana Farhumand for winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news. Okay, so last Monday we learned that AT&T was going to offload and merge Warner Media with Discovery in a $43 billion deal. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, we talked about when AT&T bought Time Warner 3 years ago, with their whole intention of being a multimedia conglomerate that could use its content to sell its devices and internet infrastructure, essentially.
Yeah, which is great in theory, but the purchase itself put them in so much debt that they needed to offload some of their assets. And AT&T is now wanting to get out of the Hollywood game.
Yeah, essentially with COVID and the streaming wars that ended up happening all at once, AT&T wasn't able to put enough money into HBO Max in order to compete with other services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+. Actually, those three streaming services specifically. When AT&T bought Time Warner, essentially they wanted to buy the HBO brand. They thought that that was a really strong content provider, just coming off of Game of Thrones and stuff like that, that would make people use their internet. Considering more than half of all internet usage every given day is from Netflix. But now it appears that that was a bad business decision, and they just don't know what to do with content. But you know who does? Discovery, which is run by David Zaslav. He became the CEO of that company a few years ago, and since then, it's really taken off, even creating their own streaming platform that is doing pretty well. Zaslav is old school Hollywood. He used to be an executive at Universal Studios, and his management of Discovery content has really proven to be successful. And actually, David Zaslav will be made the CEO of this new company. It doesn't have a name yet, but I really hope they utilize the Warner brand, because in terms of content, I think that has the most history and the most clout.
Yeah, Warner is definitely bigger than Discovery.
Or HBO, which is a lesson that I think AT&T learned the hard way. Now, when I first heard this news, I was pretty depressed. Change is hard, and this news that Warner Media was being sold is kind of scary, because of course, Warner Media, formerly Time Warner, owns Warner Brothers Pictures, who makes DC films, and DC Comics itself.
So it kind of makes it seem like AT&T thought DC was worthless
That's what it felt like in my heart.
and just sent him to the orphanage,
Kind of, yeah.
which I could totally see.
Shut up. The strangest bit of news here to me, though, was the fact that AT&T was putting Discovery management in charge of this new company because Discovery is smaller than Warner Brothers. You would think someone from Warner's would be in charge. But it may make sense if you look at the bigger picture of what it looks like they're trying to do. Given the fact that AT&T essentially fired all of the old Warner Brothers top brass, David Zaslav of the two companies actually has probably the most experience and the most success with films and streaming content.
So are they going to be merging HBO Max and the Discovery Plus platform?
I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but we don't actually know that yet.
It would make sense considering National Geographic is part of the Disney Plus platform, and Discovery and National Geographic are in similar verticals.
Right, exactly. Plus, if you did that, you'd be combining your subscribers and raising that subscription total to make it, competitive. My hunch is that they will merge. Right now, this is just a deal. It'll probably be like another 2 years before we see this come to fruition and actually see this affect upcoming projects.
Do you think Discovery is all about the Snyderverse?
I guarantee you, the Discovery intern who runs their Twitter, his inbox is like RIP right now. Everyone's probably DMing him with #restore the Snyderverse. Now, probably the most interesting and exciting theory to come off of this is that AT&T is only getting rid of a fraction of their debt with this merger. It seems like AT&T really wants to sell this. Essentially, this merger is to create something that looks really attractive to other prospective buyers, such as Universal, who Wall Street has been pushing to merge with Warner Media for some time. Universal really needs the franchises, and it would be a great way to, promote their theme park. They've already shown they have huge success with the Harry Potter section of their Islands of Adventure at Universal Studios. Harry Potter being a Warner Brothers property. Warner Media has a huge stable of franchises that they could turn into new Islands of Adventure, like DC, like Hanna-Barbera, like Cartoon Network. Imagine a Mortal Kombat island.
I don't know, that sounds really dangerous and violent. I don't know if I'd want to be fatality'd there.
They'd be like, get over here. They're like, no, I don't want to.
The Universal speculation may be putting the cart before the horse, but nonetheless, it does look like that's the strategy. All we know for now, though, is that even more changes are coming to the upper management of DC Comics' parent company.
Yeah, I totally expect there will be a lot of blood in the water, a lot of layoffs to come from this, because there's going to be a lot of redundancy. So we'll see what happens. In the end, I think this is a smart decision by AT&T, even though I'm a little pissed off at them for mismanaging Warner Media. They really hurt the Warner brand, I think, since they took over that company. Here's to hoping that they have a lot more success with Discovery. I'm really looking forward to hearing what their new name will be.
Is it going to mean that DC now stands for Discovery Channel? Discovery Channel Comics?
No.
Well, I'm going to call it that anyway.
Anyway, this huge shakeup brings us to our question of the week. In what ways do you think the merger of Warner Media and Discovery will help or hinder DC Comics and their films? It's a big question.
Yeah, will it be good? Will it be bad? Why do you think so? Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. Be sure to answer before May 29th.
Now, AT&T's stock dropped drastically after they announced this. Conversely, Discovery stock went up. But in a series of PR moves, I think to save face and serve as damage control, Warner Media gave us a slew of new updates on some of their upcoming DC projects, including the fact that a Batgirl live-action film will be directed by Adil Arbi and Bilall Fallah.
What happened to Joss Whedon?
Get the fuck out of here.
Formerly, Joss Whedon was in charge of the Batgirl movie. When he left, I think we all thought that the Batgirl project was dead. So it's really nice to see that it's actually back up and running with great new talent at the helm.
Yeah, these are the same guys who directed the most recent Bad Boys film, Bad Boys for Life, which got great reviews. I am kind of baffled by this news in a way, though. I really hope that this isn't a standalone, isolated picture and that it ties into the new Batman universe that they're building with Matt Reeves.
Or maybe she'll be part of Ben Affleck's Bat family.
Yeah, that way you could get J.K. Simmons back in the role of Commissioner Gordon. That'd be fantastic. Either way, whether her dad is J.K. Simmons or Jeffrey Wright, I think you can't go wrong. We don't know when that film is coming out yet, we just know it's in the works. In other big news, it looks like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, will be voicing Krypto in the upcoming DC League of Super Pets animated feature film, which will be in theaters.
Now, I thought this movie was called DC Super Pets. When did they change it to DC League of Super Pets?
Just last week, apparently, when they announced this news.
Okay. It seems like they're really going to use Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, to be the face of DC films. You know, he's going to be the star of the upcoming Black Adam movie. Now he's doing the Super Pets. What Warner Brothers needs really is a lead star, like in the vein of Robert Downey Jr., to kind of be the face of everything.
Exactly. And the biggest star they have, probably other than Ben Affleck, is The Rock.
Since Ben Affleck is on his way out.
Potentially, that may change. Now, in addition to that news, we also got an early, I feel, trailer for Batman The Long Halloween Part 2.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit premature considering we haven't seen Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 yet.
Right.
They probably should have held off on this trailer until we saw that film.
All of this really is just, smoke and mirrors. It's like, pay attention to this Batman news and don't pay attention to the bigger story behind it with AT&T and Discovery. But the trailer itself is actually really cool.
Yeah, it was very villain-focused, whereas the trailer for Part 1 was very Batman-focused.
Yeah, as I mentioned in a previous episode, this is supposed to be the most faithful adaptation of a graphic novel that DC Animation has done. And considering that the Long Halloween comic book had a ton of members from Batman's Rogues Gallery in it, it does look like this will be pretty faithful, considering we see everyone from the Joker, to Scarecrow, to Poison Ivy, to Catwoman, to Two-Face. They're all going to be showcased here, and it's going to be awesome. Really looking forward to this. They haven't announced a concrete release date for Part 2 yet, but with the press release for this trailer, they did slip that the next animated film DC would be making would be Injustice, which is crazy. There's no way that that's going to be set in the same universe started by Superman Man of Tomorrow, but it's exciting. We're going to see that story unfold on screen regardless.
I wonder if that's going to be a two-parter as well.
It definitely could be. There's enough storyline there for them to do that. If you're not familiar with the Injustice storyline, it was based off of a video game developed by NetherRealm Studios, the Mortal Kombat company, and it was surprisingly really good and compelling. Essentially, the Joker kills Lois Lane, and Superman turns evil and takes over the world, and Batman has to form a team to stop him.
Yeah, it was a video game series and story that heavily inspired Zack Snyder's run of DC films. And it's similar to the route that the Snyderverse would have taken if he were to continue that universe.
Yeah, it definitely kind of seems that Zack Snyder is finished with Warner Brothers, so this may be a way for Warner Brothers to kind of give fans of that universe the same kind of flavor in a way with Injustice. Also, on the animated front, we learned that HBO Max and Cartoon Network are developing two animated series, one called Batman Caped Crusader, and the other one called My Adventures with Superman. Now, the Batman one is pretty exciting because it's going to be developed not only by Bruce Timm, but also J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves.
Bruce Timm being one of the creators of the 90s Batman the Animated Series television show.
And the poster they released for this gives off a lot of the same vibes in a way, which is exciting. My Adventures with Superman actually stars Lois Lane, and I think that's going to be a great show for the female audience. The still they released for the project looks like it has a lot of humor and energy to it. The show is apparently going to star Lois Lane and Clark Kent and kind of cover their early years together at the Daily Planet. It's the first Superman animated series that we've had in a pretty long time, so it's pretty exciting. The showrunners behind this series have also worked on some other big projects, including Teen Titans Go, Invader Zim, and Voltron Legendary Defender. Sweet. Again, this is all damage control, but I'm pretty excited for all of it.
Yeah, it looks like DC has a lot to keep DC fans from worrying too much. But I think that does it for all the news for this episode, so let's go ahead and get into our main event, where we find out who would win between Wildcat and Batroc. Alright, Wildcat versus Batroc. Now, we're doing this episode in conjunction with our previous episode, which was a review of the Justice Society World War II movie. We've done a lot of JSA characters, even a team duel episode between them and the Fantastic Four, but one prominent JSA character we have yet to get to was Wildcat. And I'm really excited to be putting him up against Batroc, because they're both preeminent martial artists within their respective universes, but they have very different fighting styles. Wildcat primarily being a boxer, and Batroc being a savate fighter, which is a style that is described as boxing with the feet. So we have the ultimate puncher against the ultimate kicker.
Yeah, it's the fists versus the feet.
Yeah, and again, you guys may be familiar with these characters if you ever watched the Stargirl television series, which features Wildcat's protege, or the Winter Soldier movie, or the Falcon and the Winter Soldier television show, which featured Batroc.
Now, if you've never listened to one of our Duel episodes before, the way we determine a winner between these two characters is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using their statistics. A Monte Carlo simulation being a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling.
In our case, it randomizes statistics along a normal distribution, which is a bell curve, as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters we use are based on the official Marvel Power Grid, and we use that criteria to extrapolate the DC character stats. We've included some additional stat categories of our own, such as range, damage potential, versatility, and perception, in order to create a more complete and robust simulation.
Running these 1,000 simulations gives us a percentage of wins for each character, and we declare the one with the higher percentage to be the ultimate victor, considering that they're more likely to win any given battle. No character ever wins 100% of the time. Comics have shown that there's always a way for Batman to defeat Superman, and we feel our method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the comic book stories.
And we use this method because it was the least subjective, most unbiased way to determine who would win. Of course, we are both heavily biased toward our respective allegiances, and instead of debating these matches forever, we just let the math decide for us. So there's no fan votes here, and no relying on just feats.
Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1,000 simulations we run would play out beat for beat.
And I think it's my turn to go first, so let me go ahead and tell you all about Batroc the Leaper. Now, Georges Batroc, aka Batroc the Leaper, was born in Marseille, France. Little is known about his early life, save that he joined the French Foreign Legion as a late teen. It was with the military that he learned the martial arts style known as savate, the French art of boxing with the feet, also known as French foot fighting or kickboxing. Proving to be innately adept with his incredible leg strength and overall agility, Batroc trained endlessly, unwilling to be less than the absolute best, until he was the #1 savate fighter in the world. Incorporating high-bounding leaps into his fighting style, Batroc was nicknamed the Leaper. Though he was adept in the French service, his questionable sense of honor led him to take up outside jobs. He left the military and parlayed his fighting reputation into a career as a mercenary, taking on fights and missions for money, furthering his renown. By the time Batroc first met Captain America during a job stealing a chemical bomb from S.H.I.E.L.D. for the evil organization AIM, his notoriety as a deadly combatant was already well known by the Star-Spangled Hero. You can learn more about Cap in our Commander Steel vs. Captain America Duel episode. Batroc delighted in testing his mettle against Captain America, but after fighting, they decided to temporarily work together in a race to track down the bomb. Batroc seized it first and brought it back to AIM, but realized Cap had let him obtain the explosive so he could track him back to his employer's base and take them down.
Nice.
Batroc was then hired by Hydra to kidnap S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Sharon Carter in order to lure Captain America into a trap. Batroc was happy for a rematch, but turned against Hydra when they started shooting at Cap during their hand-to-hand fight. Calling them men without honor, Batroc helped Captain America defeat Hydra and rescue Sharon Carter. Batroc then formed a team called Batroc's Brigade, consisting of other villainous mercenaries such as Swordsman, the Living Laser, Whirlwind, and Porcupine. Batroc's Brigade took jobs fighting against heroes such as Iron Fist, Spider-Man, Hawkeye, and the Punisher, in addition to frequently going up against his long-standing rival Captain America. Though the Brigade's missions were often unsuccessful, Batroc did manage to steal Captain America's shield on one occasion and deliver it to his employer Obadiah Stane. On another occasion, however, he reached out to Cap for help in stopping his handler at the time, Mr. Hyde, from destroying New York, and the two saved the city together. Though that heroic act may have been in part motivated by the fact that Mr. Hyde didn't have the $5 million he promised Batroc. While living the high life up in Monte Carlo, at one point, Batroc got into a skirmish with fellow mercenary Deadpool after getting cleaned out of all of his money while gambling. The merc with a mouth dropped Batroc out of a casino window onto cement, breaking both of his legs. He took some time to fully recover before getting back into the game. He was later hired by Black Panther's nemesis, Claw, to help him invade Wakanda alongside a band of other villains. However, Batroc's infiltration was cut short by a couple of Dora Milaje bodyguards. Baron Zemo then drafted him into a new iteration of his Thunderbolts team, a group of seemingly reformed villains fighting for good, which you can learn more about in our Lex Luthor vs. Baron Zemo Duel episode. Later, during the events of the Superhuman Civil War, in which costume crime fighters were ordered to comply with the United States government, Batroc signed the Superhuman Registration Act and was assigned to train military recruits at the Quantico Marine Corps base in Virginia. He later trained other superheroes at Camp Hammond as part of their government-sanctioned training. Batroc got bored and soon quit working for the government and began taking up mercenary jobs again, eventually running into the new Captain America at the time, Bucky Barnes, whom you can learn more about in our Drake vs. Winter Soldier duel. Bucky was unable to stop Batroc from stealing the original Human Torch's body for the purposes of reverse engineering it, but was able to stop the plot nonetheless. And later, Batroc fought the new Captain America, Sam Wilson, while on a job for Baron Zemo, who hatched a plot to sterilize mankind. The plan was foiled by Sam Wilson's Cap, whom we detail in our Midnight vs. Falcon episode. Shortly after, Batroc was recruited into a new team called MODOK, which was run by the AIM organization mastermind MODOK. That's right, MODOK, which stands for Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing, created a team that stood for Mercenary Organization Dedicated Only to Killing. There, Batroc served as an elite operative who ran missions and trained Gwenpool in how to fight. Together, the team helped fight off an alien invasion in a battle during which MODOK's base was destroyed, and the group disbanded. He then reformed Batroc's brigade and fought Steve Rogers during the Secret Empire run, which saw Cap's history rewritten as a Hydra agent. After that, Batroc went to work for the Kingpin, serving as a member of the latest Thunderbolts team. And that's his history. Abilities-wise, George Batroc has no powers to speak of, but he is widely considered to be one of the best unarmed fighters in the world. He is a grandmaster of the Savate martial arts fighting style and an expert in multiple other styles. His body is in peak human condition, and he's particularly trained in jumping with a 10-foot vertical jump, which is about twice the real-world world record, and is particularly agile. His legs are especially strong, able to kick through a brick wall, and he can kick ground objects to send them hurling with deadly force. His bodysuit is made of Kevlar, and occasionally he'll employ a whip cane or neural shock boots to stun his enemy as he kicks them, though he won't have either of those in this match. We're going to keep it simple.
Batroc is one of those characters who I've always seen and heard people talk about, but I wouldn't have been able to put a name to the face if you asked me to, prior to a couple months ago. It's always kind of exciting to learn about new characters. Batroc himself kind of seemed to be a little bit more heroic than I would have expected.
Yeah, he definitely has this sense of honor about himself, but has questionable morals that he ties with it. He thinks of himself probably as this debonair, heroic figure, but really he's just kind of a sleaze.
He's actually a really good foil for Wildcat. He seems like a classy guy, but with questionable morals, whereas Wildcat is more of, like a greaseball who tries to do the right thing.
Yeah, they would hate each other.
Totally. Let me get into Wildcat's backstory. Now, Ted Grant was born in the early 1900s. Shortly after his birth, his father Henry swore that Ted would not grow up to be fragile like him, but strong and fearless. Following through on his pledge, Henry put Ted in every sport he could growing up, and Ted proved to be a natural athlete. During the Great Depression, as a teenager, Ted was tragically orphaned and left penniless due to his parents' debts. Wandering the city streets at night, Ted happened upon a man being mugged in a back alley and helped him fend off the would-be thieves. As luck would have it, the man Ted saved was none other than heavyweight boxing champion and legend Soccer Smith.
Why did that guy need help?
He didn't really, but Ted didn't know that either.
Oh, gotcha.
Soccer took Ted in under his wing and raised him, mentoring him and training him in the science and art of boxing. Ted excelled in his training, and it wasn't long before he was noticed by Soccer's managers, two men named Flint and Skinner, who got Ted into the world of professional boxing. Due to his natural strength, speed, and agility, Ted devastated his opponents, earning him the nickname the Wildcat. Eventually, the time came when he was able to challenge Soccer himself for the world heavyweight title. Being so young and inexperienced, Ted was not favored to win the match, and in order to rig the bout in their betting favor, Flint and Skinner hid a poisoned needle in Soccer's boxing glove, intending only to drug Soccer into unconsciousness during the fight. Unfortunately, they used too much poison, and Soccer died during the match. Afraid of getting caught, Flint and Skinner accused Ted of killing his mentor, and Ted fled in fear from the angry mob. While Ted went into hiding, Flint and Skinner hired hitmen to find and kill him. Ted was eventually captured by 2 police officers who were killed by the hired guns, and their deaths were also pinned on Ted.
Wow, this would make a good movie.
It would, yeah, totally. Desperate to clear his name while hiding from the public, Ted was inspired by the Golden Age Green Lantern, Alan Scott, and other mystery men of the time to hide his identity with a mask. So he created a Black Panther costume based on his Wildcat nickname. You can learn more about Alan Scott in our Green Lantern vs. Iceman episode.
What a ripoff of Black Panther.
Except that he came out in the 40s.
Okay.
Disguised as Wildcat, Ted discovered Flint and Skinner were responsible for Soccer's death, and he beat the shit out of them before turning them over to the police and clearing his name. Lured by the rush of bringing criminals to justice, Ted became a vigilante, prowling the streets in his Cato cycle, and even taking in a sidekick in an amateur mechanic and detective named Stretch. During World War II, Ted joined the Justice Society of America and the All-Star Squadron super teams, during which time he had a romantic relationship with Queen Hippolyta of the Amazons, who acted as the Themysciran champion Wonder Woman during that time. Like the rest of the JSA, Ted was at one point bombarded with temporal energies that slowed his aging process. As we mentioned, you can learn more about the JSA in our JSA vs. Fantastic Four episode. After the war, Ted returned to his professional boxing career, during which time he refused to throw a fight at the behest of an evil sorcerer named King Inferno, who was a supervillain to the hero magician Zatara, father of Zatanna. King Inferno cursed Ted for ignoring his command and attempted to transform him into a cat, but Zatara manipulated the curse at the last minute, giving Ted a few cat-like traits instead, primarily 9 lives.
Oh, cool.
Ted eventually retired as the undefeated heavyweight boxing champion of the world, but maintained his superhero career and remained a member of the Justice Society. He also became a trainer, mentoring successful boxers such as Juan the Mauler Montez, and even up-and-coming costumed fighters including Batman, Catwoman, and Black Canary.
He trained Batman.
Yes, yeah, in boxing.
Huh.
Something of a ladies' man, Ted fathered 2 sons during his time. One he was aware of, named Jake Grant, and one he wasn't, Thomas Bronson. Jake would later be abducted by the supervillain Yellow Wasp and never found again. During the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Wildcat's legs were shattered, leaving him wheelchair-bound and unable to resume his crime-fighting lifestyle. Depressed, Ted left the JSA, though the mantle of Wildcat was soon adopted by Yolanda Montez, Ted's goddaughter and the child of boxer Mauler Montez. Yolanda was a metahuman, born with retractable claws and enhanced agility due to experiments conducted on her mother while she was pregnant. Eventually, Ted regained the ability to walk, and he trained Yolanda in fighting and helping her build relationships in the superhero community. Yolanda joined Infinity Inc. along with the rest of the JSA members' protégés, and after that team disbanded, she joined a new superhero team established by Amanda Waller known as the Shadow Fighters, with whom she died during a battle against the villain Eclipso. Distraught over the loss of Yolanda, Ted took up the Wildcat mantle once again and rejoined the JSA in the hopes of training new young crime fighters, one of whom was revealed to be his son, Thomas Bronson, a werecat who took on the name Tomcat. Like other members of the JSA, Ted was not initially a part of DC's post-Flashpoint continuity, though a version of him did exist on Earth 2, another dimension within DC's multiverse. There, he assumed Batman's role as Dick Grayson's mentor, training him to become the new Dark Knight. After the events of Doomsday Clock, however, when Dr. Manhattan restored DC's pre-Flashpoint continuity, Ted and the rest of the JSA are back. Now, Wildcat has no physical superhuman powers or abilities, though he is in peak physical condition despite his age, usually depicted around 60 years old.
Oh, like Jay Garrick or Alan Scott?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
He's surprisingly fast, strong, and agile, and he's the greatest boxer who has ever lived, capable of knocking out numerous villains with a single blow. In addition to boxing, he's also a master of kickboxing, capoeira, hapkido, Krav Maga, Muay Thai, and Taekwondo. Now, thanks to that magical curse, he also has night vision and 9 lives, which recycle themselves over time. To kill him, he has to be killed 9 times in a row, making him effectively immortal. The trait also aids in his decelerated aging and helps him maintain peak shape and strength.
Batroc is not going to have any problem whatsoever killing this dude 9 times.
Dude.
That being said, he only needs to kill him once in order to win this match.
No, because as the comics have shown, Wildcat resurrects like almost instantaneously fully healed.
Still not concerned. Batroc lays fools out all the time.
Not fools like Wildcat.
So you admit that Wildcat is a fool.
Oh shit! No!
So dumb. But now that we've gotten their histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1,000 simulated matches will go. The winner is determined by simulations, not this speculation, but it is fun to imagine how this could play out.
We don't set any rules for this match other than the characters don't know anything about each other going in, except that the other character is a threat that needs to be put down. And we say that they start off about 50 meters apart in an environment that has no bearing on the match itself because we don't take stats for the environment.
Plus, certain characters have advantages in some environments over others, and we want these characters to win on their own merit. So let's get into it. The characters meet on the battlefield. Who goes first? I think Batroc would go first because he's faster with his strong legs. He's a faster runner.
Okay.
So he's going to just dash toward Wildcat super fast and leap from like 30 feet away, like 10 meters, in this like flying kick that just pow slams right into Wildcat's chest.
I mean, that's a pretty big telegraph leaping from 30 feet away. It's not like Batroc could like change course midair.
Right.
So Wildcat, he's just gonna get out of the way. He's gonna roll forward and then uppercut Batroc as he's sailing overhead, like just exploding his nuts.
What? Batroc is like, sacre bleu, me nuts. But, like, we'll just say that Wildcat hit Batroc, like, in the inner thigh area and just barely missed his nuts.
I don't know. Wildcat's punches are pretty true. His aim is on point.
But either way, Batroc is going to drop to the floor just in pain, but he's going to launch himself from the ground, inverted, but kicking up like a kicking uppercut, connecting with Wildcat's chin, dusting it, throwing Wildcat's head back, knocking him to the ground.
Okay.
He's going to do a flip and then land on top of Wildcat in a double stomp and then twists like Bruce Lee style, just shattering Wildcat's ribs and ending one of his lives.
Oh, that's quick.
Well, Batroc is very lethal.
Okay, but Batroc doesn't know about Wildcat's 9 lives, okay? So, while he thinks Wildcat is dead, Wildcat's just going to surprise him by grabbing his ankle and just flipping him onto the ground.
But Batroc doesn't fall to the ground. He's so agile that he turns this getting thrown to the ground thing into like a handspring.
What?
And he lands on his feet and gets into a savate fighting style position.
Okay, so Wildcat gets on his feet and notices the savate fighting style because he's so experienced. He's also an expert in kickboxing. So
you don't think a Batroc recognizes boxing fighting style?
Everybody recognizes boxing fighting style. You know, Wildcat's just gonna be like, all right, let's dance, Twinkle Toes. And since he knows how to counter like every savate move, as they're going back and forth, Wildcat's gonna manage to get in like a flurry of jabs and straights and hooks and a combo move before finishing Batroc off with a haymaker.
10-hit combo.
Exactly. You know, Batroc's face is like all bloodied and swollen. He can probably barely see out of one eye.
Okay, so Batroc gets knocked back and he can still see. But he's gonna like twirl his mustache, like his thin like Salvador Dali mustache. And he's like, finally, a worthy opponent. And he's gonna leap forward and cross kicks Wildcat's knee from the side, forcing Wildcat into a kneeling position. And Batroc's gonna just jump roundhouse kick him right in the back of his head.
No, because Wildcat's just gonna catch Batroc's foot before it connects. Then he's just gonna like swing him around in a circle like a professional wrestling Mario style, and then just like send him flying away like a discus.
Well, Batroc gets up and he's pissed, so he stomps the floor, and his legs are powerful enough, you know, that he can like kick through brick walls. He stomps the floor so hard that it's gonna crack the floor a little bit and create a little bit of debris. And Batroc is gonna kick this small bit of debris at Wildcat like a soccer ball, except as fast as a bullet, you know?
Oh, jeez.
I'm sure Batroc is like really good at soccer, or as the French call it, soccer. And it just hits Wildcat like right in his temple, and it just knocks him out and takes Wildcat's second life.
Damn, that was a good move. But I mean, Wildcat, you know, he just gets back up, resurrected, okay? So, you know, Batroc's probably going to try the same thing, kicking debris at Wildcat from a distance.
Yeah.
But now Wildcat knows what's coming, so he's just going to, like, dodge and punch the debris, like, aside as it comes.
Like he's gonna dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge?
Exactly. And then he's also gonna like notice some of the debris on the ground, so he's just gonna grind his bloodied fist into it, so the shards embed themselves in his boxing hand wraps.
Oh, like tie glass knuckles, like Kickboxer 2.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So then Wildcat is just gonna charge Batroc, just rushing him.
Well, Batroc leaps over Wildcat as he rushes in and snap kicks Wildcat right in his back, in his spine.
Okay, so that kick is gonna like lurch Wildcat forward, but he's just gonna rock back with a powerful spin back fist that slams into Batroc's head and just dazes him. And then Wildcat is just gonna press the attack in another combo with his glass knuckles, just turning Batroc's face into hamburger.
Ah,
Yeah,
hamburger with a little bit of gravel or something mixed in.
exactly.
Yeah.
Eat that.
Well, Batroc, fighting to survive, he is gonna react by jump hurricane kicking Wildcat in the head several times. Just whap, whap, whap. And he's gonna knock Wildcat down to the ground. And then Batroc, still desperate, is just gonna go for the kill shot. With Wildcat on the ground, Batroc is gonna stomp Wildcat's head in, ending Wildcat's life again, and doing that repeatedly, however many times he needs to in order to get to 9.
What? Well, that's brutal. But the problem with that is that Batroc doesn't actually know Wildcat has 9 lives. So he's gonna miscount, okay?
Oh, that's true.
And while Batroc thinks he won, Wildcat just resurrects and rips Batroc's mustache off.
What?
Yeah. And while Batroc is surprised, that's when Wildcat's just gonna punch right through his chest, exploding his heart. It's like the ultimate insult.
Batroc's gonna be like, my mustache! And then he dies. But, you know, I'm gonna say that Batroc didn't miscount, and he just kept stomping in Wildcat's head however many times it took, whether he knew he had 9 lives or not.
Agree to disagree.
Well, we'll end the match there. We'll find out what really happened when we find the winner of this fight after running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations on their stats.
So let's do that, and we'll be back with the winner.
So I gotta say, between the fists and the kicks, I think kicks won. Kicks are a lot more versatile and powerful.
Then punches? No way! Hands are way more dexterous. You could punch, you could grab, you could flick.
All right, then we'll have a little test. You fight me with only your fists, and I'll only kick. We'll see who wins.
Okay, let's do it. I mean, we kind of did it with this simulation.
That's true. That's true. The stats between these two guys are pretty comparable. Of course, Batroc was faster with his greater leg strength.
Just barely, though. And Wildcat was barely more perceptive thanks to the fact that he has night vision. If this match took place in the dark, Batroc's totally losing.
That's true. That would give him a slight advantage. We found it hard to figure out how to incorporate Wildcat's 9 lives into the stats, so we accounted for that in the durability category. But otherwise, these guys were pretty even, including fighting skill, including intelligence,
Damage level.
Yep.
And versatility. Both of these guys are kind of one-trick ponies.
Absolutely.
But when it comes down to it, I think Wildcat's going to come out on top. And our social media followers agree with me. 60% of them thought that Wildcat would defeat Batroc.
Which totally surprises me, because with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show and the Winter Soldier movie, I would think that Batroc is actually more popular than Wildcat. Or maybe the problem is that we just have too many DC fan listeners.
That's not a problem.
That's a huge... We need to get more Marvel fans listening to this show, for sure. Because that poll was just off. It was just way off.
Was it, though?
Well, the winner between Wildcat and Batroc is... Batroc.
Shut up.
It was Wildcat.
Yes!
Wildcat won 577 matches out of the 1,000 fights. Batroc only won 423, so it was 57.7% to 42.3%. Wildcat comes out somewhere in between 1/2 and 3/5 of the time.
And I'm not surprised. You know, the guy's really hard to kill.
That was the whole thing. That's what it came down to. Wildcat's 9 lives powers. Otherwise, Batroc would have taken this. The fact that Wildcat just keeps coming back is a bullshit superpower.
Hey, it clearly works for him.
So I don't really think this means that boxing wins over kicking. I just think it means that, you know, fucking immortality wins over mortality.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, that does it for this duel. Let us know what you thought about the results by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Again, if you could follow us on Instagram, that would be great. We're trying to reach 1,000 followers.
And we're also trying to reach 100 patrons again. We're asking just a small fraction of our listeners to join us on Patreon for as low as $2 a month. If we meet our goal before the Black Widow movie comes out, the show will remain free on all platforms. Again, if we do put the show behind a paywall, all patrons will still have access to the show through Patreon's RSS feed.
in addition to a bunch of other perks, which is really what you would be paying for.
Right. But that does it for this episode. In next week's episode, it'll be another Duel episode. We're going to find out who would win in a fight between the psychic Green Lantern villain Hector Hammond, who was in the 2011 Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern film, against MODOK, who is the leader of the evil organization AIM in Marvel, and who's getting his own Hulu television show, which sponsors this podcast. So we're going to learn all about MODOK, and then we're going to follow that episode up with a review of the Hulu television series MODOK, which is out now. And it's hilarious, so check it out.
We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers Ken Johnson, Jace Crump, John Starosky, John Speas, Zachary Hepburn, and John Bechinina for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Up, and away,
True believers.